Alright, this is a demo of the Polymorphism Extension in Fantasy Grounds Unity, which is sold in Forge by Press. Basically, polymorphism turns NPCs or PC tokens on the CT into other NPCs. It supports a number of spells and traits and special words to do this. I'm going to briefly go over the options because there really aren't that many. There's only two. This is basically for concentration spells. If they interact with the polymorphism supported operations, they'll cancel those concentrations, but this is not a generic make sure there's only one concentrated thing. This is only where it interacts with the things I support in polymorphism. I usually have that off so that it automatically does clear concentrations of other things. I don't see any point to ever turn it on. Validate wild shape rules. This is for 5e legacy only. 2024 5e has changed a lot of the rules, and I haven't supported it yet. But in general, this is 5e legacy. And everything I talk about 5e in here will be for the legacy. That's if those rules for wild shape are applied or not. Some people have their own homebrew rules, so if you turn that off, then wild shape will let you put pretty much any NPC in its transformation token field. That's it for options. So, just as a basic example, we'll start with Druidy here. He's a Druid, 4th level, created through the character wizard. And let's see. Right, if you have any problems with the display of this, all you have to do is flip between the tabs and it'll correct itself. I've never been able to find out why. Sometimes it gets garbled, but for now, just if you ever see something not looking right, just click back and forth between the tabs and it'll be fine. This usually starts out with a select filter. I've already selected wild shape for it. I haven't put anything in yet, and let's go ahead and do that. Only the DM can enter things into the NPCs that you're going to be turning into. I'm going to go ahead and, if I try and turn into a dragon, right, it's going to tell me errors of the rule sets being enforced right now, and it's going to tell you the reason it couldn't do it based on the level and all the other rules that are going into wild shape. We can go ahead and do a rat. That's pretty simple. And I usually use the Druid wild shapes from DMS, the Dungeon Masters Guild, that Press puts out. It's got better pictures and stuff. I guess I'm going to also do a badger. I think that's a low-level thing that can probably do it, and I'll pull it out of the same thing. So you can see this creates a list, and you can have a list of things that they can turn into. And that list can cover a bunch of different filters, different spells and stuff, but it'll only allow you to select things in that list that apply to the rule set. Otherwise, it won't let you do those. So for now, we've got wild shape with badger, right? And I'll go ahead and approach this from the other side. Let's, for instance, assume it's Wizardy's turn, and this is the client side over here, and they basically control all the characters right now in my local character set. And so if I go to here on the character side, I can see that I've got wild shape. I've also got animal shapes for the testing, but I'll get into that. And I can do either, turn into the rat or the badger is my choice. And when I try and do that, of course, I'm going to fail because it'll only let you do it from the client side if it's your turn. And from the host side, you can always do it. There's no stricture on when you can actually turn back and forth between it. And if you notice here, the active's not there. I'm just going to flip back and forth to get it there. That's some kind of Windows refresh thing that I've never figured out. And whenever you see something missing, just go back and forth. So I'm going to go ahead and it's his turn, it's his turn now, so he's going to go ahead and just turn into that. And right now I don't have all my assets up that establish ownership and double clicking. When you have vision in play and it flips out of it actually removes the token that currently has the selection and doesn't select another, it'll basically blank your screen if there's vision trouble. I'm going to ignore that now because I run all my extensions together, so I don't have this problem. But basically, if you remove a token from the map and it had the select for the vision, you're going to lose your vision. That's just the way FGU works. And you have to select somebody else you own to do it. Or you could select on here if you had certain extensions that respected owned NPCs, but right now I'm just showing you polymorphism by itself, which I never use by itself, so there's that. So right now this is a sheet that is currently in effect, and if I double click on this sheet, that's actually the true original sheet here, which you wouldn't be using for this, because this particular sheet would be, you would not use this sheet. And that's because this sheet has, it's not what you're running right now. That's just as a reference if you need to bring up the old sheet. In general, it'll only ever show you, your current sheet, and that's actually what's in the CT too. And it transfers a number of effects from what you originally had into what you're turning into. There's a set of rules for that. I'm not going to go over them. You can look up in the forum or the text file in the forum if you want to see the exact rules for all that. But generally, and when I switch back, I just hit active, right? And I go back. And in this case, you see that you've got a selection because, again, it's a PC and they play the game right when it's not an own NPC. They're just not able to do that. And I have other extensions that handle that. As you can see, it gave that little refresh thing again. And sometimes it happens, sometimes it doesn't. I don't really have a pattern on when that is. My customers or my players usually don't complain about it, so it must not be happening to them. It may be a client artifact here because I'm running on my own machine, or who knows. But if you do have one, just flip between the tabs. So yeah, essentially that's polymorphism. You switch into something and then you switch back, right? And the host, of course, doesn't need it to be the turn, right? It can be anybody's turn and he'll flip back and forth, and it's fast. Let's go ahead and show the person who's actually doing the changing, right? And that's how it works. Now, when you turn into something, you need to realize that it's turning into whatever's the NPC here when you turn back, right? It's going to be whatever you loaded in here. But as far as turning back, if you're a PC, that's not much of an issue because the PCs, when you edit the PC data in, say, the main page and you change stuff or whatever, it's instantly changed in the actual database record set where PCs are stored. There is no difference. But if you have, say, the Archdruid here, and I'm not going to make it his turn so I can actually have some space here. If you have the Archdruid here, which I've put in the rest of the things I want to show you, you're going to essentially see that he better have all the things you edited in him in here. And how I did that is I made a copy of the Archdruid in my local database, and then I would edit up the things I needed. Like I put in the special Shapechanger and Shapeshifter traits. Doesn't matter what's in the test, just the keywords there. And these are like a superpower polymorphism where it'll change there's no rules. It'll just let you put anything in here for the actual thing that you're turning into. Actually, I'm not in the CT. And these things only work when you're in the CT. So yeah, if I basically go to Shapechanger and I say, you know, let's go ahead and turn into an adult dragon Dracolith, right? It's going to let me, you know. It will basically, and it's giving me warnings here for different things that won't allow that. Like if I switch to a different, you know, polymorph, that one's not going to do that, right? But these lists are for everybody. And it's just whichever filter you have up will show you which ones you can actually do. But yeah, if I'm this guy and I turn into him, fine, I'm a dragon now. And it's a direct of the dragon. So you would actually, if you wanted to have it apply his intelligence and other things, or you just want a special NPC for him directly, it does no modification, unlike the other things. They all have rule sets on what it's changing in the sheet you turn into. These two, Shapechanger and Shapeshifter, do not. So you would actually make an NPC specific that you wanted for this if you didn't want to be directly. Like if I had Strahd and I made him a Shapechanger and he turned into a bat, that's a very specialized bat. So I would actually make that in the NPC and then drag it in and drop it in here. Realizing that it would just turn back and forth into this with no modifications. And the only difference between Shapeshifter and Shapechanger in terms of what's going on is the death mechanism. Shapeshifter will be like Wild Shape, where if you get damaged, you will shift back into your form with X amount of damage. And if you don't, if you're in Shapechanger and you die, you know, you're dead. So those are those two. And if I want to show you, let's say, we'll do it with Druidy because it's simpler. Actually, we'll just do it here. It's already up. So I'm going to go ahead and just wild shape into a badger. All right. If I do it from that side, it better be their turn because I don't want them spamming me with changes while we're playing. So I'll pick somebody I own so I get the vision back. Again, I don't usually run like this with just this. I have my extensions which play nice with owned NPCs. FGU does not. So anyway, let's say we get this guy down here. Oh, let's get that guy down here. And that NPC comes down here, targets your little badger. And he's currently aware of anything you turn into will always be aware of what they have turned into by. In other words, this effect wild shape is there, and it's going to know who did that, if it was polymorph, or it just knows self stuff. Okay, we're going to have the orc attack him. Let's go ahead and have him target him and just do some damage on him. That was enough to kill him. He exceeded his death by 7. And what you'll see is he turns back into his original shape, and the damage is passed in that he exceeded his death by. That's how wild shape works. And that's also how Shapeshifter would work in terms of death. Let's go ahead and move on to another thing I wanted to show you from the Archdruid. He is going to, I'll move him back over here, clear his targets. Now the Archdruid, I showed you the shape changer in that, and shape change is another thing fairly similar. Right, I basically just changed into him, and I can stop concentrating with this button also. It's the same as hitting the active. You're switching back and forth, and it's transferred a bunch of things based on that rule set for Shapechanger. I think it's like intelligence, wisdom, charisma is preserved or something. I can't really remember which it is, but it follows the rules that are in play for that spell. Polymorph is actually, a targeted one. So if I polymorph a friendly, there won't be a saving throw. But if I polymorph right. Now this is something I always forget. The Archdruid, or any NPC that I throw these polymorph spells on, wasn't designed for using them. I just drop the spells in. And sometimes I forget to set spell casting flag that they expect to be out there in order to do it in traits. Okay, so I now remember to do that, and as long as I have that spell casting here, not in actions, I mean it's already in actions, but it's supposed to be in traits. There's some arcane FGU rules on when they'll let you do stuff. But anyway, we've got that in. He failed his thing, and he turned into a rat. The mule is now a rat, right? And as a host, I could turn him. If I was actually owning him over here, he wouldn't have the option to go back into, only the host can do that. But let's say, okay, he's done it, and I could turn him back, right? Just by doing that in the host, or hitting this again. He failed again, and he's actually got, he actually knows who did that to him. In other words, it's the Archdruid down here on Polymorph, so that if I actually get attacked, say Rangy comes here and does some damage on him with his longbow, it's going to cause a roll, right? And in this case, he failed the roll for the concentration check, and the mule changed back, right? So that's how all these things also work. If they've got concentration, which they all do, if they're hit, they're going to potentially lose that concentration. What else do I want to show? Polymorph, animal shapes. If I target more than one, this is only going to work on friendly targets and who automatically acquiesce to it. I have to make sure I select correctly. And then I do the animal shapes. I can have multiple targets that apply. And there's some rules on that. And again, if as a host, I can always turn them off individually. And of course, they don't normally have that polymorph. It's just when they were actually turned into something. So animal shapes is the exception to most of these other things where it can affect multiple things. And what else do we have here? The only other thing I support is with Archmage. This is probably a case of where I didn't remember to make a right. So I didn't remember to make a copy of this, which essentially means that when I made all my edits for it to be able to execute true polymorph, I lost it when I turned them back and forth during my private testing. So I'm going to have to go in here and re-add true polymorph. This is the NPC. I'll take it from the 5e and drop it in there. And make sure he's got spell casting in his traits, which he does. Why the druid doesn't, who the heck knows? Data definition errors. So I've got true polymorph now in the Archmage. I'm going to go ahead and delete this one and do what I should have done to start with and drop this one in. Put him in there. Okay. And when I look at him, of course, now he has true polymorph. And I'll go ahead and let him do the rat again. Not because I have to, just because I figure that that's the lowest level thing, and I'm sure it's going to work in all the rules. Though with this guy, he probably has higher level rules. Okay, so we've got true polymorph, we got the rat, and that's a targeted spell, so let's go ahead and target him. And again, he didn't show that, so I'm going to flip back and forth. Okay, he failed and turned into a rat. Same deal, if I attack him, he could have a chance of breaking. But it just applies whatever the true polymorph rule set is. I think that's everything. Alright, there was an addendum to polymorphism recently that I'm going to add on to the end of the other video. This is polymorphism support of 2024 5e Ruleset, which I didn't have before. Still early days in it, so I'll just show you what I have currently. We've got the client on this side with a couple guys I made through Character Wizard. This is all 2024 data sets. It's also using all my extensions. I'm not going to cover any of those. So what I want to cover is the options, which are new. Polymorphism now has added in rules for animal shape, rules for polymorph, rules for shape change, rules for true polymorph, and rules for wild shape. And essentially what these do is you can have them default to the rule set that's defined by FGU, and that will be this data right here, the game's rule version. So whatever this is set to, Legacy or 2024, if my poly stuff is set to default on those things I support, then it's going to basically allow you to just use that. And that's the default I deliver with. That particular default is going to take the rules as written in 2024 and turn, most of them will use temp hit points to manage the transition and break the transition when you run out of temporary hit points for things like animal shape, polymorph, shape change, and true polymorph. Wild shape is basically just going to add in the druid level of polymorph hit points, and they'll all keep the hit points of your original guy. Where the other four, animal shape, polyshape, shape change, true polymorph, will basically take the temporary hit points, your hit points of the original person you're changing, and turn those into temporary hit points. And you will lose all hit points, temporary hit points, when you make this transition based on the rules for temporary hit points don't stack. Now, there's a lot of debate on when you turn back into something, whether those temporary hit points come back. I'm of the school that, they're concentration spells. And even when they're not, they are basically governed for the life of the transition for that temporary hit points only. And they will not come back to you. This is not a free buff where you can just turn into some huge thing with a lot of hit points and then turn back into yourself and have, a huge number of temporary hit points on reserve. However, there's a lot of debate on it. So what these options allow you to do, default, is going to basically set the FGU rule set, whatever it's currently using. 2024 will force it to be 2024 with no temp hit points being transitioned back in. 2024 temp hit points will actually allow you to keep the temporary hit points when you whatever's left of them when you transition back in, and Legacy just forces it to be Legacy no matter what that default is. And they all share the same options. Let me just show you a couple things real quick. We'll go ahead and have Druidy. I've got a Badger. She's got wild shape. That's a self, so we don't have to really target. She's right there. We go ahead and turn. You can see the typical transition in the combat tracker. The map is updated. But unlike in Legacy, he's not actually turned into the Badger. He's retained his hit points. There's a bunch of new wild shape rules, and I'm not going to cover those here. I just try and respect them. And then, of course, when I change back in, she's back to her normal self. And there is no trigger in the new rule set for her changing back. But if I have temporary hit points and I go into this state, you're just getting the rules as written temporary hit points of the Badger, or sorry, of the Druid level. She's level 4. And when you go back, you're essentially turned back in, and those previous temp hit points are gone due to no stacking temporary hit points. Let's see. That's it for wild shape. I'll go ahead and show animal shape in the new rule set. Now the new rule set is being set because actually, let me just skip going through every single one of them. I'll just show you wild shape, and we'll go ahead and say wild shape. You're gonna do. We'll force it to be legacy. So in the old ways, things turned into right. You turned into the literal Badger and came back in. And if you had any hit points or temporary hit points, they would be recovered when you came back. That's just the old rule set. And you can mix and match because of these flags I've provided. And if you have the new temp hit point thing where it pushes all the hit points over, if there's any left, it'll pull them over. That's all that's saying. It's easier to see it in Polymorph. Let's go ahead and use Wizardy for that. Actions, Polymorph. Basically, I will have to target somebody for Polymorph. And since this is a friendly, there's no saving throw involved. Those rules have pretty much not changed that much. So when I turned them into it, in this case, you get the Badger as the temp hit points for the Polymorph. And when you turn back in, you get nothing. Unless, of course, you go to that option and you set it to do this hit points transfer, which I would never do. That's like a big cheat to me. That's why the defaults are as they are. You should probably just not touch the options at all. Just play the game as is. And without going into all the other stuff, that's pretty much the rules. And you can see that when you turn into things, actually she was already up. When you turn it into things, it should be copying everything as it should based on those rules. Somebody will have to debug this and make sure it is, but that person is not me. And what else? Oh, the type was preserved as race. I didn't know what they meant when they said, preserve the type, because a PC doesn't have a type. So I'm just using race. That's about it. You can look up the rule sets and make sure it covers it, but hopefully that gives you a good idea of what I've done and why there's so many new options.